You're listening to Season 11 of Mobile Suit Breakdown, a weekly podcast covering the entirety of sci-fi mega franchise Mobile Suit Gundam, from 1979 to today.
This is episode 11.3, Kung Fu Hassle, and we're your hosts. I'm Tom, longtime Gundam fan, and if you hear a faint whistling in the background on this episode, it's not a new sound effect. We're actually recording this podcast inside a wind tunnel to test its aerodynamics.
There's a gale warning on, and this is the windiest neighborhood we have ever lived in. And I'm Mina, new to G Gundam, and I just really like dragons, okay? Forgot to mention this during the talkback, but I even wore my Chinese dragon-patterned sweatpants to stay on theme. Mobile Suit Breakdown is made possible by our talented and tenacious paying subscribers. So many of you joined that we won't quite be caught up this week. If you were expecting to hear your name and haven't yet, please give it another week. Thank you all, and special thanks to our newest patrons. Masana is Furikuri, Adrian F., ZJ, Wotan's Curse, Turn A Gundam, Stephen W., Martin S., Gunk Flipmore, Noel K., Jonathan H., Irradiate Space, Gundam Griff, Lawrence P., Jimmy L., World's Biggest Character Name Redacted for Spoilers, Fangirl, Charlie, RR Mercury, Kathy Y., Grizzly Sigma, Rose L., John B., Ashiok, Phil, Coffee Time Simulator, Courtney S., Dicey, Ryan V., Alex C., Schnitzer, Joshua L., Velcry, M. Griffin, Jack K., Old Man 519, Slash 616, Mecha Meme, John O., Queen Crimson 31, Turn Andrew, Clamp, but with a 4 where the A should be, Master M, Alex U, Snacky G, Rob, and Jason F. You keep us Genki. And special thanks to Brainchild for buying us some tea and a book from our wish list.
This week we're covering G Gundam Episode 3, Taose Majin Dragon Gandamu, or Defeat Him, the Evil Dragon Gundam, originally broadcast on May 6th, 1994. This episode was written by head series writer Gobu Fuyunori, storyboarded by Nishimori Akira, and directed by Sato Ikuro. Nishimura Nobuyoshi was in charge of animation. Excluding Fuyunori, all three are veterans of the Victory production team. Newly introduced character Sai Saishi was voiced by Yamaguchi Kappei, who had already worked with chief director Imagawa as Daisaku Kusama, protagonist of Giant Robo. He has also played Usopp in One Piece and Rat Trap in the Japanese version of Beast Wars, among many other roles. Despite his specialty in playing childish characters, Yamaguchi was just a few weeks shy of his 29th birthday, with a 2-year-old son when this episode aired. The talkback ran long this week, so there will be no research at the end of the episode. And next week it will be all research as we return to Yugoslavia. But for now, it's time for the play-by-play.
We interrupt our coverage of this 13th quadrennial Gundam fight for a very special message from our sponsor, the Tourism Board of Neo China, in partnership with the Chikurin Temple. Have you ever wanted to experience the thrill of the Gundam fight for yourself, despite lacking the peerless martial arts skills, hot-blooded fighting spirit, and state-of-the-art battle robot necessary to compete? Then the Neo China 13th Gundam Fight commemorative Shaolin tourist experience was made for you. Yes, you! With the Gundam Fight tourist experience, you'll enjoy true, old, mainland Chinese culture, inspired by only the most authentic 1970s Hong Kong films, as you retrace the footsteps of legendary Gundam fighter Domon Kashu in an officially licensed replica core lander. The tour starts in a nameless rural village where guests can enjoy being menaced by real former bandits. Kick, punch, and throw our professional stuntmen to your heart's content. They're not allowed to complain. Kids will love riding the Dragon segment hovercars, and couples looking to heat things up can take turns saving each other from leering gangs of flamethrower-wielding thugs. just like Domon and Rain. Don't forget to sign those waivers. In the morning, you'll receive your next mission from a pair of authentic ordained monks from the real Shaolin Temple. Uh-oh, it sounds like the bandits have captured Neo-China's Dragon Gundam. You'll have to leave these still smoking embers of local lives far behind as you follow the bandits' trail toward their base at Mount Wutai. But watch out for hitchhikers. Your guide for the next stage of the experience might be sleeping in the road somewhere along the way. You'll arrive at your next destination just in time to soak in the sights, sounds, and delicious smells of a local festival. And speaking of soaking, guests looking to experience all aspects of the proud but penniless wanderer lifestyle will find plenty of dirty dishes waiting to be washed. Don't get too comfortable at the inn, though. Festivals are tempting targets for gangs of goons, and if you are not careful, they might just make off with your replica Corlander, leaving you to make the rest of the journey on horseback. On the way to the bandit base, you'll pass mountains, streams, and pine trees so beautiful you'd swear they were straight out of a painting. What's that in the distance? Is it the Great Wall of China? Is it a heavily guarded bandit lair? Is it the next stop on your exciting journey? That's right, it's all three. Cool off after a long day's journey with a bracing bucket of cold water and an extra vigorous massage from our prison-themed spa. Then join in a traditional lion dance. After dinner, you'll be freed to wander the complex and see the sights, but don't go too far. Any guests who have completed all the challenges so far will be given officially licensed Shining and Dragon Gundam mobile fighter costumes, and allowed to fight each other in a meticulously accurate scale model of the very arena where Domon and Saishi first clashed. Article 4 International Gundam Tourism Regulations. Gundam tourists are responsible for their own vacations. Entrust yours to the Tourism Board of Neo-China today.
Another week, another episode of G Gundam. Nina, was it fun?
Yeah, it was fun. It was very silly. I mean, which of them hasn't been at this point? But it was fun. I like the kid. I like Saishi.
All right. Secret special guest. Was it fun?
A frenetic romp.
Put that on the poster. Yes, we are joined once again by Sean Michael Chin, a theatrical fight director, fight choreographer, and martial artist, who, if you don't mind me saying so, many years ago also trained in Shaolin Kung Fu.
I did a brief stint in Shaolin Kung Fu. It's not my main martial arts background, but I dipped my toes for a bit.
Not as brief as mine.
But you were saying you actually have a stronger connection through your theatrical fight direction and fight choreography experience.
Yes, the person who had the greatest impact on my training and my development in stage combat and screen combat too, had a deep background in particularly Northern long fist style Kung Fu. So that was a big way that I approached my training and pedagogy for theatrical violence, which I think is particularly pertinent for a lot of contemporary Chinese martial arts.
And listeners with long memories may recall that you joined us for the first season of this podcast to discuss the episode where Amuro finally pulled out his second sword. And Sean is now with us to discuss episode 3 of G Gundam, the appearance of Saishi and the Evil Dragon Gundam.
Evil? How dare you?
They call it evil in the opening. That's not on me. That's on them. I'm just the messenger.
It's being used for evil. Okay, a question though about the Dragon Gundam. There is the long serpentine dragon shape that the bandits use.
The one that is composed of their little cars, their little hover cars, like some
Right.
sort of roller coaster or theme park ride.
That can all fly around separately or can all link up into a single long tendrily dragon. So is the Dragon Gundam meant to be piloted by multiple people?
I don't think that has any connection to the Dragon Gundam.
Oh, it's not part of it?
That's just a dragon that they have.
Oh. I assumed it was part of the Dragon Gundam in some way.
Considering the Dragon Gundam's ability to extend limbs and hair pieces all willy-nilly, that does bear logic.
I mean, yes, they're clearly very similar, but I don't think there's any actual connection between them.
Mm-hmm.
So then the real question is, did the bandits already have their supplementary Dragon car link-up devices before they found the Dragon Gundam?
I think they must have, because their leader refers to them as the Kokuryu, the Black Dragon gang. So they're already dragon-themed. This is just a nice coincidence. Maybe everything in what's left of China is dragon-themed.
And why is one of the bandits wearing a Viking helmet?
It's very operatic.
You do see that like horned helmet style with Chinese bandits fairly frequently, at least in the movies. I've never met a Chinese bandit in real life.
I imagine this is some sort of like Silk Road melting pot of West China, exposure to Europe, Western barbarians thing.
I mean, okay, but the Vikings themselves never actually wore those. Those were invented by like opera costume designers of the 19th century. I don't know where they actually come from. Maybe they actually come from China.
I suspect it's probably more connected to traditional headwear of the Mongols.
That would make sense.
Okay, but for its use in Chinese epics or Chinese media depicting banditry, it is meant to be like, that guy's a barbarian. Look at his helmet.
See Chinese racism about the Mongols.
Though the Dragon Gundam has a Q, which is a Manchu style, and therefore more closely related to Mongolian styles than those of the Han Chinese.
The Q being the long ponytail-like strand of hair at the back of the head.
Yeah, it's a long braid, which the Dragon Gundam has, and at the end of the episode, when it nearly decapitates the Shining Gundam, that's not a tail, that's its hair. It's Gundam hair.
Considering that it's coming from the mobile fighter, it reminds me of kind of the long hair tassels that you would see on helmets.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I feel certain that in some story or other, I have seen a martial artist who puts blades in their hair and whips their braids around.
For sure.
They're bladed braids.
100%. Terrible idea, but it looks so cool.
Yeah.
Was that in Swordsman 1? No. We have watched so many Kung Fu movies to prepare for this specific episode.
But also for the show in general, it really seems like Imagawa was heavily influenced by wuxia martial arts movies.
For sure. And we're planning to watch some more of them as we go. When I was reading the interview Imagawa did about this episode, and he just like lists off 6 different Kung Fu movies, and he's like, this whole series, and all the works of this one director. The man has a vast knowledge of wuxia movies and clearly a great passion for them.
I will say, while I am going to do a little bit of digging on landmarks in this episode, like I have done with all of the episodes so far, what most of the scenery made me think of was a particular style of Chinese painting, of landscape painting. And that's not an area I'm super familiar with, but luckily one of our listeners and patrons knows a bit more about it and was telling us this style of landscape painting is not meant to depict real landscapes in any way. It is meant to be evocative of like the ultimate possible beauty of nature. You are creating ultimate landscapes of perfect harmony. And so, yeah, I'm sure there are some sites in this episode. I mean, some of them get name dropped, specifically the mountain, the temple, the Great Wall. A lot of the scenery probably owes more towards these landscape paintings, these imagined perfect landscapes, than to any particular place or region of China.
Again, in that interview, Imagawa describes the action as sort of leaving the world of Kung Fu movies when they leave the villages and entering the world of Chinese landscape painting. So that was very conscious.
And worth remembering that anybody on the team for this show who received a classical artistic education, which many of them would have before switching into animation, would have at least had to study a lot of that painting. Like that would have been a standard part of the artistic curriculum that they studied.
Well, that certainly would have been true for the art department, who are the people in charge of the backgrounds.
I wonder if there's anything to be said about, since we are talking about the environment that is taking place, and this fight happens in a nature setting rather than a city setting. And even further than that, outside of the Dragon Gundam appearing gloriously from the waterfall, there doesn't seem to be that much interaction with the environment in this fight. Like you don't have giant mechs crashing into buildings or misfires lighting up the landscape.
The Shining Gundam doesn't emerge from any recognizable landmarks the way it does in both of the prior two episodes. There's a little bit of like rocks burst off of it when it first appears, almost as if it had been hidden inside one of those like stone Buddhas. If it was, we didn't actually see said Buddha.
Cut for time.
That's a shame. I would have liked to see a Buddha get broken.
That sounds terrible.
No, you're right.
What's wrong with you?
I just think it would have been a cool image. It's a show full of cool images. This episode, more than the prior ones, is riding on the vibes of the cool images.
Oh, yeah.
There is a little bit of environmental interaction in, for example, the structuring of that shot with the setting sun in the background and the two Gundams meeting in the air, just hanging there as a hawk flies towards the camera screaming.
Well, sunset and sunrise being the typical times at which to have a duel.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the first historical connection between Japan and China. The letter that was sent, the ruler of the land where the sun sets greets the ruler of the land where the sun rises. Something to that effect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, another funny, weird thing, and this drives me batty because it comes up in calligraphy studies as well. There are a lot of Chinese place and people names that get used in Japanese as well, but they are pronounced completely differently. They don't sound anything like what they sound like in Chinese. Because what they're doing is they're using the Japanese pronunciation of the same characters. And in Chinese, generally speaking, characters are pronounced one way. And in Japanese, there's like 6 ways some of them can be pronounced. So in the episode, they say Mount Godai. In Chinese, it's much closer to Wutai.
Yeah, the characters. So this is a hassle for us because there is a Mount Godai. It's in Japan, and we're both of us much less familiar with China, the Chinese language, and mountains in China. So there may well be a Godai in China, but if there is, I couldn't find any evidence of it. And those characters for Mount Godai in Japan are the characters for Mount Wutai, a very famous temple complex reasonably near the Great Wall in China.
One of the great mountains of Buddhism.
So probably this is Wutai, not Godai, that they're talking about when they refer to a Chikurinji temple in the colony. That is, again, probably this Japanese pronunciation thing. There is a Chikurinji in Japan.
Well, the Rin is probably the same Rin from Shaolin.
Forest. Shaolin is the small forest temple, and Chikurinji is the bamboo forest temple.
Got it. I did love that Neo China appears to have a greater wall encircling it.
Reminded me of in the culmination in Avatar: The Last Airbender when Aang Summon has all of the elements orbiting him at slightly askew angles.
I am so positive that is based on some traditional depictions of like spiritual power in Chinese art.
Must be.
I'm sure they're referencing the same thing.
The wall that appeared in the colony in Neo China, the wall that appeared in Neo China when it first was depicted reminded me of the Snake Road in Dragon Ball Z. Something that is identifiably connected in theme to the Great Wall of China, but on a smaller, more continuous scale.
And also astral, I suppose, in its way, and divine. Neo China looks like a Chinese conception of heaven. It looks like a mountain where immortals would dwell.
Gotta eat some peaches.
I keep thinking about something Sean said during the episode. I had noticed shortly after the kid joins Domon in the Corelander, which, have we mentioned, looks like a sports car? Because it looks like a sports car. But they're driving down the road, and the music in the background is almost Western-y, like Lone Ranger-esque, riding your horse through the desert kind of music. And you mentioned the story structure.
It really occurred to me on these first 3 episodes, while we have Domon as the protagonist, the central character that we are following, so far, each episode has really been a story happening in a place, and Domon just shows up in that story. None of these are really about what he's going through. We know that there's the photo, he's searching for a person, but he is interloping into these events happening in these locations, which feels very much like old school westerns and travelers' tales in general, whether it be traditional Chinese folklore or lone wolf and cub sort of stories.
Well, or even Tom and I were watching a Japanese costumed hero series called Kaiketsu Zubat. That's another example. For an even more recent example, the manga Kino's Journey is very like that. The stories are mostly not about Kino. They're about these various places Kino visits.
Or consider Columbo.
But
Consider Columbo.
Columbo's not journeying. Columbo doesn't go anywhere.
Au contraire, Columbo travels into the strange and murderous world of the upper class.
That's true.
It is well suited to serials, but it's also very well suited to a particular kind of character. One who is fairly taciturn. A character who doesn't bring a lot of their own drama into the story. And it's hard to imagine that they will be able to keep that up for the entire run of the show. At least not if they want to develop any kind of ongoing narrative.
Well, this early batch of episodes, this first arc, if we want to think of it that way, may be more a matter of introducing all of these other side characters who will continue to be important. Not so much for the first episode, because we know that, what's-his-face, the Italian mobster, has gone to jail now.
Michelob Chariot.
That's right.
Michelob Ultra Chariot.
But we know Chibode is going to keep fighting. I'm sure Saisaishi will keep fighting. And the other thing I realized is that with all of these characters, and especially with the ones who are not taken out of the fight completely, the ones that Domon comes to respect, they are all trying to fulfill a dream. We talked about Chibode as being an example of a version of the American dream. Here we have the young scion of a kung fu family who is trying to revive his family's art that is dying out and gain it some prestige to make it famous again.
Well, like Domon, everybody is fighting for their own reasons. They are also, of course, from large and wealthy markets, which might be induced to purchase Gunpla.
Well, there is that.
Very cynical, Tom. Very cynical.
But before we talk about how cool the Dragon Gundam is and how much, yes, I would build a Gunpla of it.
Good to know. Let me write that down.
There's something very ironic in the fact that the purpose of the Gundam fight, as we are reminded every single episode, is to determine who is going to rule humanity for the next 4 years. But none of the people actually fighting seem to care about that at all. That is not why they are here.
It's not so different from war after all, is it?
Hey-o.
Ooh.
Not only are the people who are actually participating in the Gundam fight not situating themselves or aiming to be this autocrat, we've only seen one government involved, and they were decidedly not the good guys.
Oh, Sean, the government is never the good guys.
So, Nina, since you did bring up how cool the Dragon Gundam is, I have to mention that the first time that it appeared, it immediately just made me think of, I'm going to age myself here a little bit, the second Megazord in the American Power Rangers series.
I do not recall the second Megazord or the first Megazord. I don't remember what those looked like, sorry.
I definitely remember the first Megazord. Was the second one the ninja season?
No, the second one is when they adapted a Sentai show that was very much based on Chinese iconography, and then they added all kinds of weird names to things. The thing about it in the American transliteration, may be the word best here, was that they didn't change the suits. They changed the Zords, the big machines, because they had run out of footage from the original series that they had adapted. But the new machines were all based on Chinese folk. So like there's a lion. The main one is a big red dragon. When they all come together, it looks very much like medieval Chinese armor. It's got the big old circle in the middle of the chest.
The mirror, yeah.
Yes.
Which the Dragon Gundam also has.
That's probably the main thing that made me go, I'm a child again.
I really like that the dragon head like opens and then it's just a regular hand inside that can come out.
That emerges.
When it needs to do hand stuff, like grabbing at cloaks.
I mean, it's only when you need finger stuff. Let's be real. The dragon head can do most hand stuff.
And this is a twin-headed dragon, one for each hand. So the Dragon Gundam's primary weapon, besides its extendo arms and flamethrowers, is its cool pole with flag, reminiscent perhaps of the Monkey King's extendo pole.
Lots of pole arms in wuxia movies. Like, they make for good fight scenes. Lots of spears of varying lengths and...
The staff is the traditional kind of base weapon platform in many traditional Chinese arts. It's referred to as the grandfather of weapons.
And if I'm remembering correctly, Shaolin was originally famous for its staff form. All the empty-handed stuff came later and was not really their specialty.
Also a classic of martial arts movies to have that scene where, oh no, the enemy moves so fast you almost can't see them. You have to learn to see them with your mind. Domon closing his eyes and sensing Sai-Sai-Shi.
Though it's so funny, he does the whole, like, seeing without sight bit. He closes his eyes, he can see the Dragon Gundam in his mind, and he still gets it wrong.
That's great. That is wonderful.
What actually saves him are his good reflexes.
What actually saves him is Sai-Sai-Shin going, I'm up here!
The immaturity of youth.
Yeah.
How old do you think that child is?
Ooh.
9 or 10?
Oh, I was going to go mid-teens.
Oh.
Yeah. The development on those forearms. that is a not a beefy child, but that is a ripped kid.
He's been training since he could walk, probably.
Exactly.
Yeah. He is supposed to be 16 years old.
What?
He is older than Amuro.
Boom.
Was at the beginning of First Gundam.
Apparently he's had a much less traumatic childhood.
No, let's not trauma shame here. Different traumas.
Or is just generally a more cheerful, sprightly sort of kid.
Except for the darkness within.
He is actually very clever about how he gets the Dragon Gundam back. I respect it.
I want to know what his plan was lying in the road. If somebody didn't come almost hit him with a core lander.
I think this episode has a lot of structural story problems.
Don't worry about it.
Really big ones that are almost perhaps too big to be surmounted by a don't worry about it.
That's fair.
But I do think that all of it actually does slot into place if secretly those two monks are working with Sai-Sai-Shi. The big problem is the Dragon Gundam shows up at the beginning of the episode.
Right, I was going to say...
Domon wants to fight the Dragon Gundam. He's like, Rain, get me my shining Gundam, woman. I'm going to fight.
He could have captured it for them right then.
And the two of these guys show up and they're like, hold on, wait, please listen to our request. Please defeat the Dragon Gundam for us.
But not right now.
My guys, my dudes, brothers of the Shaolin Temple, that is the one thing he came here to do.
But if it defeats the Dragon Gundam here in this first village, he might actually defeat it and not get convinced to call it a draw by those same monks later on.
It's a conspiracy.
I definitely thought that they were going to threaten Rain again there at the end when they're like, hold it right there, Domon.
I do appreciate how badly they feel about doing that.
Why is Domon reluctant about this? They're asking him to do the thing he came here to do.
It's not fun if you're doing it for somebody else, Tom.
I mean, I guess I can understand that. But everything falls into place if they set Domon on the course to run into Sai-Sai-Shi, and then Sai-Sai-Shi manipulates him into getting him back into the Dragon Gundam.
He is extremely good at manipulating Domon.
Domon just lets himself be manipulated really easily. That's the other thing. Domon is extremely reactive and kind of passive in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't do much. He just like goes from place to place, losing various things that are important to him.
But I think, again, that follows into the story structure of the wandering protagonist.
It reminds me a bit of like Yojimbo or any of these movies where you get the stoic wanderer who spends the first 75% of the movie just having bad things happen to them and enduring it. And then at the end of the movie, finally the dam bursts and they go on a rampage.
Here's a question for you, though. If the priests and the kid are all plotting and scheming together, then why does the kid look so distressed when Domon asks the bandit leader if he is Saisaishi and is like, no wonder those priests are so devastated by your behavior.
You're right. You're right.
Deep down, Saisaishi is deeply embarrassed that he wants to be a chef.
He just wants to be a chef and everybody keeps making him fight.
But he got walk skills. Do you see him up there on that fire?
Will he display martial chef skills in the future?
Tom, this is G Gundam, not Ranma half.
Guess who else the voice actor for Saisaishi plays? Ranma.
Amazing. Original Ranma or new Ranma?
Both.
Both. That's cool. I didn't know that. Also, why is the bandit hideout just full of barrels of tea? That's what is painted on the side of all of those barrels, just tea.
I have a theory. Okay.
Okay.
I'm standing in front of the red string corkboard.
Okay.
I'm Pepe Silvia over here on this one.
Excuse me while I buckle up.
Okay. At one point, Imagawa was asked about the flags that the Dragon Gundam uses. Why the flags? Are they a reference to anything? He says, no, they're not a reference to anything. But there was this one commercial I really liked where they have like a bunch of people basically like doing martial arts moves with flags.
Okay.
Color guard.
I looked up the commercial.
Of course you did.
It's from 1993.
Mm-hmm.
It was from Coca-Cola's introduction of a new product, a bottled tea.
Oh.
A bottled tea called Saryu Saisai. I think they got the name Saisaishi from that tea. And I think all the things about tea
references
in the bandit hideout are a reference back to that.
Okay.
The Saisai in the tea, by the way, is, I think, the Chinese pronunciation of Iro.
Okay.
For those of us in the room who don't speak Japanese.
It's the kanji for color.
And repeated twice, it's like variety.
Yeah, various, miscellaneous.
A character perhaps with many facets.
I don't know how many undiscovered depths Saisaishi is going to be displaying in the future.
It's kind of young for that.
Facets, not depths. You just turn slightly, that's all.
Domon's rapid fire kicks in the first bandit fight made me think of Chun-Li's, I don't remember the name of the attack, but her leg is moving so fast it's blurring kicking attack that she had.
Bandai was like, there's money in them there, street fighters.
Beat up that car.
They also have him do that with his punches. Like, it's just his body static and then fists coming at the screen from every angle.
Cheaper and easier to animate.
And then you just do a panning shot over all the goons being flung away.
There was one shot in the first fight in the village. I think it's immediately after the impressive kick sequence where it goes out to a wide shot and Domon is leaving. And then there's just like a half second before the final goon plops over. And that reminded me very much of classic samurai films and martial arts things where the protagonist has the final blow and then wind whistles through, fall over gracefully.
Right. It takes a moment before the opponent realizes they're dead.
Remember, we just watched Once Upon a Time in China yesterday, 2 nights ago, and the
second one.
main villain gets got that way in a pretty extreme version of the trope.
A fair amount of blood in Once Upon a Time in China 2. The first one, I don't recall being that bloody.
You have to raise the stakes for the sequel.
It's true.
Raise the pressure, if you will.
You don't even know.
Well, that was the, I'm sure you've heard this before, but that was one of the things that led to the blood fountain in Sanjuro, the sequel to Yojimbo, and a very famous quick draw duel at the end of that film. Just this single strike of the sword and then a veritable geyser of blood coming from this actor. And according to filmmaking lore, it was because the effect was overpressured. It was not supposed to go that hard. And it was supposed to be a little bit more realistic. And instead, it created one of the largest tropes and probably a decent amount of Quentin Tarantino's oeuvre.
This is the thing about making stuff in analog. If this were just done digitally, it would be very easy to correct it if it had been done wrong. You just render the thing again, tweak a few knobs and render the thing again. But when you do it analog, sometimes the constraints of what you're trying to do produce unexpected moments of brilliance.
And often you can only do it once. It is entirely possible that those costumes were ruined by the time that scene was done filming, and they could not redo it.
Remember, everyone, we're using real acid, so we only get one chance at this.
Not quite that bad, but
The captive xenomorph is only asleep now. Once we release it.
cannot hear that eagle call sound effect now without thinking of Physical Asia and Team Mongolia. Physical Asia is a sports and fitness competition show on Netflix.
Team sports and competition
Yes.
show.
Team Mongolia won everyone's hearts, and they were constantly, like, they had a team pose that was posing as though they were firing arrows, and every time they did it together, the show would cut in an eagle call sound effect.
Let me take this opportunity to drag us back to G Gundam.
Okay.
And actually, in talking about Physical Asia and the way the different countries are portrayed, you bring up a really good point about G Gundam. All of these depictions are heavily mediated by media about these countries.
Oh, yeah.
No one has gone to China to find out what China looks like to accurately depict a Chinese village. They have watched movies set in China, mostly made in Hong Kong. There is a process by which the essential cultural components of a country are boiled down into a highly marketable stew.
That Italian-ness gets boiled down to, like, mafiosos and Fellini movies. Like,
And pizza.
and the ruins of ancient cities.
yeah.
America is the American dream, the murderously abusive government, the
New York City.
New York City, the Big Apple, poverty and the dream of wealth.
Just keep punching until you get a good job.
China becomes mahjong, dragons, bandits in the countryside, lion dance, Chinese landscape painting. Even when this is being done by people who live in the country and in the culture themselves, it is then filtered through what the world wants to pay for. The globalization of media means that movies made in China that are appealing to Japanese, American, and European audiences get made more often and for more money than do movies that don't appeal to that wider market. And the same, of course, is true for every country.
I think you really hit on something when you mentioned that the films that the show creators were absorbing were by and large made in Hong Kong. So at this point, still under British rule. So much of the popular Chinese film industry of the time doing kind of a remembered nationalistic pride. The setting of those films being very much in this past setting as opposed to contemporary or future. So I think it's very interesting that the Hong Kong films that are being produced and being absorbed are set in this imagery of the China that was, and by extension potentially could be, as opposed to the 20th century film depictions that we'd seen in Italy and the United States.
Though part of that is a product of government censorship. If you want to praise the Kuomintang, denigrate the Qing, because you're not allowed to praise the Kuomintang, but you can make the people they overthrew look real bad. But audiences that don't have the full cultural picture don't absorb all of those messages. You absorb signifiers, and you don't necessarily attach them to their actual origins. Like, when they designed the Dragon Gundam, did he understand the political history of the Q and what the political implications of that might be to a Chinese audience?
Well, similarly with the fringed jacket that Chibodia wears, or many other aspects of character design or of the plot in this show.
For instance, the lack of sidewalks and an insult to all New Yorkers.
But reminds me of a talk that we went to by a professor who studies anime and manga and Japanese pop culture, and was talking about sort of different analytical frameworks for looking at media, and talked about postmodernism. And part of how he defined postmodernism was that it's a reference to a reference. It's a copy of a copy of a copy. Things are so far removed from their original referent or original inspiration that people don't even necessarily remember what the original referent or inspiration is.
There's a quote that Imagawa relays about G Gundam a lot. I've seen it crop up in multiple interviews, and it's something he says he learned from Tomino before he took over the project, and was possibly advice Tomino gave him, which was, if you only ever make a copy of a copy of a copy, the copy will degrade every time. That's why you have to make new things. That's why you can't keep making classic Gundam. You have to make something new. And while G Gundam is very referential to other things within the Gundam world, it is something new. An attempt, at least, to break the mold. It will be a while before we can say this for certain, because I think what we need is to be able to see how Imagawa treats Japan and Neo-Japan before we can really say this. But I do think there is an awareness of the limitations of what they're doing, that they cannot accurately depict any of these countries.
We know from previous research that they were concerned about the order from on high to make it like a wrestling show, including with these sort of national stereotype characters. That there was concern on the team from the beginning that, oh, won't that offend some people? Like, won't that end up being offensive?
And I think Imagawa is trying to do something to address that. He's trying to present a future scenario in which these countries on Earth have become...
They are no longer the nations themselves, right? Because the nations themselves have moved to space. They're symbolic. They have purely symbolic value.
But the nations that are in space are not the same ones that were on Earth. They are the descendants of the nations that we know today. What has been left on Earth is not the nation itself, but a memory of the nation. And a memory, like a movie, is always faulty. A memory is always going to be selective, only the most memorable pieces, in the same way that a movie is always going to be only the most cinematic pieces, only the most marketable pieces. Whether or not this is successful, whether or not it takes any of the sting out of an inaccurate depiction, we'll have to watch the show and find out.
That reminds me of a research piece that you did years ago, Nina, about the memory of home.
Yeah.
Almost flipping that on his head and this being an almost imagined nightmare of what the memory could be.
Mm-hmm.
What if Furusato but evil? Filthy, horrible Earth no one ever wants to go back to, ever.
Well, it's the old country.
But there is this sense from people who leave that they don't ever want to go back. And they don't even really want to live the way people in the old country lived. But there is a sense of rightness, of almost like comfort and spiritual satisfaction in the idea that it exists and there are some people like maintaining the old ways somewhere. But do you think that exists here in the future century? Or are they like, ew, gross, Earth, we don't care about that?
No, I think, look, if they didn't feel that connection, they wouldn't call their countries Neo whatever. They would call them Zeon, or the Frontier Side, or Cosmo Babylonia. But no, they call them Neo-China, Neo-Japan, Neo-America. The Neo-China thing, by the way, is, again, I think part of this, that like Neo-China is not Chugoku. It's not the country of China. It's a bunch of expats who remember China and associate themselves with China. I keep thinking about like Irish American culture, which is distinctly not Irish culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a parody or pastiche of Irish culture, filtered through the exaggerating lens of Americanism. And that's the way it is for all of these Neo countries. In the same way that the Gundams themselves are like exaggerated, larger-than-life stereotypes of an American or a Chinese person or an Italian.
I mean, just look at what the colonies themselves look like. Oh, what is our most recognizable whatever? You know, it's Greek temples for Greece. It's the pyramids for Egypt. It's an actual, real, recognizable mountain for, I'm going to guess, Switzerland? For the United States, there's a Mount Rushmore and a ginormous Statue of Liberty.
And wasn't the Neo-US like literally the shape of a star?
Yes.
I would not want to live on one of those star tips.
I don't know. If you're in the very tip, you get windows on both sides. That seems pretty cool.
I think you could, at that point, I think you're getting windows on like an entire hemisphere.
I assume nobody lives like on the grassy surfaces or faux grassy surfaces. It's probably just astroturfing. Nobody lives on the colonies. I think they all live in the colonies.
How could we tell? I haven't been there yet.
Oh, you haven't been invited to the colonies? I go up there for vacation sometimes.
The story of my life.
But we did invite you on because of all the fighting. It's one of the most fight-heavy episodes we've encountered, actually, and that's saying a lot for this show. As a depiction of martial arts action, how would you rank it?
Very consistent. In G Gundam, they set their expectations very cleanly from the start. The first time that somebody catches a bullet, it becomes incredibly clear what the physical capability of the characters are, or at least the characters who are going to be engaging in the physical conflict, whether they are doing it on the ground or in the mobile fighters.
You mentioned when we were watching it that gravity is optional.
Oh, well, for Saisai-shin, certainly, yes. That character seemed to be able to turn it on and turn it off. Everyone else seems to have, at the very minimum, an exaggerated relationship, which is how all narrative depictions of violence have, to some degree or another. At no point in a piece of fiction are we actually observing or portraying actual violence. We are creating a series of images to evoke a sense and a feeling and a response from the audience about how they interpret the idea of that violence, which is a long-winded way of saying it's playing make-believe at a very high level. So Domon slots directly into classic hero position. We are seeing him fight off lots of effectively mooks, thugs, many people at a time. I thought very much about when he was hanging in the interrogation scene. He kicks that guy in front of him and from no support, just hanging from a rope, full boots that dude off his feet.
Well, his legs are like 2 meters long. He's got a lot of whip action in there.
Sure, but he's hanging from a rope. That's not whip action. That's core strength, buddy. That's all core. But when it comes to the...
I heard he had like an 8-pack.
I think you're underselling it here. This iteration of Gundam transforms the psychic superpowers of previous Gundams into martial arts superpowers. Who are the characters who are going to be piloting the mobile fighters? It's whoever displays some kind of martial arts superpower, whether it's super speed, super strength. Saisai-shin is fast to the point of near teleportation, though maybe it's also disappearance. I think about his introduction when he just disappears from view and then is in the back seat. But at the same time, he's got that gigantic jump spin kick that lands square on the bandit leader's neck, and that man is dead and drops like a sack of potatoes.
Roll him off the steps into the waterfall.
Well, Saisai-shin's not that tall, so maybe he needs to climb on top of him to get into the Dragon Gundam.
No, that makes sense. That explains everything. Often when people are talking about the psychic powers in early Gundam, some people like to argue that they're more metaphor than literal. Whether you subscribe to that view or not, don't worry about it. And that's also how I view a lot of the more exaggerated martial arts stuff. The fact that this person is like superhumanly fast merely evokes the feeling you get when you see someone so dominant, when you see someone who is just where they need to be when they need to be there, which was how I always used to describe one of my martial arts instructors. He wasn't particularly fast if we were just talking about like a sprint or even his hand speed. It was just that he was where he wanted to be when he wanted to be there and before you were ready for it.
The way that I describe progress and skill acquisition to actors that I'm working with and students that I'm teaching, even in a purely theatrical combat setting, it's almost never about speed. It is always about timing. It's never about reach. It's always about positioning. One of the biggest differences in observing, say, a match, an MMA match, a boxing match, whatever, an unscripted and mostly realistic portrayal of two human bodies at a crossroads where there will be a winner and a loser, versus a narrative conflict where there is a storyline where the audience is meant to be paying attention to certain things and not being paying attention to certain things, is that the camera shows you everything. And when you're able to see everything, especially when it's presented to you on a small box, if it's the television screen in front of you, if it's on your smartphone, whatever it may be, we are able to absorb all of the information on that screen much better than all of the information in a live action setting. And that tends to make things seem a little bit more truncated and almost a little slower. The shape and function of a screen is a focuser. You're able to tune out everything else. It reduces the amount of information that your brain has to process. So you're able to see the finer detail of how things are going.
Because we're not in it trying to respond to things that are happening. We don't have that same sense of immediacy. Like if you saw two people fight on the street in front of you.
Part of it is certainly the sympathetic nervous system about like recognizing other physical bodies in space going through an activity. And we are ultimately social beings. It's how we have literally all of the nice things that surround us. Oftentimes, when developing a piece of action, you are using camera movement to add or reduce the apparent speed of motion. And way back when, especially in the era that G Gundam was coming out, you had a lot of what is called speed ramping. You see this in a lot of kung fu movies of the time. And it's actually ramping up the speed. It's removing frames to make the action seem faster. They literally are performing at a superhuman pace. It's not a cheat. It's part of the genre itself.
It's not a cheat. It's a technique for achieving the desired feeling, the desired reaction from the audience.
It makes the live action film more like animation. Because in animation, if you want to speed things up, you just draw fewer frames. And then in speed ramping, you're just removing frames to increase the speed at which, the fist moves from one side of the screen to the other.
It works really well with all of the things you can control, and it becomes a little uncanny valley for things you can't control, such as hair and fabric. Or anytime somebody jumps, if they're not on a wire team, if they're just using their own normal body in normal situations, then all of a sudden they are jumping at a slightly strange rate and falling at a slightly strange rate. The audience is not stupid. We all have human bodies. We all understand basic physics principles. And that is when I'm watching, particularly animation, the difference between a really engaging piece of animation and something that seems a little underbaked or lighthearted, if that's not its intention, is the timing and the how it plays with expectations of gravity or not.
During the Dragon Gundam fight, when Domon first activates the Shining Gundam, there's a long sequence of him, entering the mobile trace suit. He's screaming, he's flexing, the plastic spandex stuff is getting attached to every crevice on his body. And then he does sort of like a warm-up routine. He's doing some kicks, some elbow strikes. This is all canned animation.
Yes.
This has all been prepared in advance, and they'll play it over and over again every episode. Do you perceive a meaningful difference between that and the stuff that is bespoke to this episode? On a fight choreography direction level, is there a discontinuity there?
Ooh, fascinating question. I would say ultimately no, because it's about setting up and managing audience expectation. It almost serves in the same way as the drawing of a sword. It's a lot more than that. It's quite a lengthy sequence, and for production value, it's certainly, if they can use it over and over and over again, I can absolutely understand why they would. But the notion of the hero arriving, readying themselves, does a lot to set up the expectation of this is the main event. I can see a situation where if Domon was in the Shining Gundam and we didn't get that sequence, it would feel off. As an audience member, I would be primed to be more concerned for Domon. But if he's getting his full suit up, readying his action, we're putting him into prime hero capability and mode, I'm expecting the hero to win.
Yeah, I can imagine myself as a child watching this, having worked out on some subconscious level the format of the series, understanding that, this is the time where you're supposed to get excited because Domon is about to do the martial arts. Like, we've finally gotten to the point where the whole storyline is going to be resolved by Domon's shining fingers. And the longer, obviously there's a balance, but the longer you draw out that feeling of excitement and expectation, the more satisfying when eventually the clash happens and his righteousness is proved in victory.
And this is a format that is in all kinds of media. This is in professional wrestling. This is in actual combative boxing and MMA, the walk-in music. The thing that this particular sequence made me think of is I know that at least in some traditional Muay Thai lineages and Silat lineages, there are traditional, what you could call a war dance that is part of competitions and part of demonstrations and has its roots in that tribal warfare system of everybody preparing for combat. And they are these ritualistic movements that have some amount of martial capability, but they're not quite like a kata or a judo or a taolu. And an instructor with Silat Sufin Belidiri, Malmorny, talks about a lot of these movements as the physical and emotionally preparation, putting on the armor, drawing the weapons, even if it's just hand-to-hand work, preparing oneself for the task at hand.
And from a narrative perspective, I think predictability and repetitiveness can get a bad rap nowadays. There is something very satisfying and comforting in hearing a story that has a set pattern that repeats. And you know, based on that pattern, okay, now we get the big fight. You know there's going to be some kind of adventure in the first half, and then Domon is going to suit up, and then there will be a big fight. And then Domon will go to a new place and have an adventure and suit up and have a big fight. I don't know if this has actually been studied, but I hear so many people talk about this, that kids love repetition. I remember one summer watching the same movie with a young cousin of mine almost every day, sometimes multiple times a day, all summer long. She just wanted to watch this one movie over and over and over again. Like, kids love repetition. So in that regard, whether they did it consciously or not, it makes it more of a kid's show.
What is coming into sharp relief in these episodes is the difference between the martial artists and the thugs. Every episode has had a bit of both. Mm-hmm. But the martial artist is not just defined by their capacity for tremendous violence, but by the fact that that's not who they are all the time. They have to transform themselves. They have to enter the violence state. And for each of these characters, entering the Gundam, putting on the mobile trace suit, that's when they transform themselves into someone who is capable of violence. When Mikolo Chariot tears off of his outer clothes to reveal that he's been wearing the mobile trace suit the whole time, we discover that he is a person who, despite his martial capabilities, is not really a martial artist. He's a thug.
It's a very romantic view.
It would need to be for this kind of story. After next week's continuation of the research on Yugoslavia, we'll be back with episode 11.4, A Gundam Fighter in Paris, where we research and discuss G Gundam episode 4 and Rose of Neo Versailles. Spider Gundam, Spider Gundam.
Actually, it's called the Arachno Gundam.
More Gundams should have cute little hats. Do not speak to me or my Gundam ever again. Nintendo Power Glove. Clumsy, Rain. Really clumsy. Would you hurry up and kidnap me already? Jeez. Obligatory electroshock scene. Paris is shining. Every rose has its thorn. Men only want one thing, and it's absolutely disgusting. Combat avec moi. Is there any problem the Shining Finger can't solve? And it's like some kind of metaphor for carrying the crushing weight of an entire nation's hopes and dreams. Ready? Go!
Mobile Suit Breakdown is written, recorded, and produced by us, Tom and Nina, in scenic New York City, within the ancestral and unceded land of the Lenape people, and made possible by listeners like you. The opening track is Wasp by Misha Dioxin, the closing music is Long Way Home by Spinning Ratio, and the recap music is Window by 1000 Hands. You can find links to the sources for our research, the music used in the episode, additional information about the Lenape people, and more in the show notes on our website, GundamPodcast.com. You can get in touch with us by email at hosts@GundamPodcast.com. If you'd like to support the show, please tell your friends about us, leave us a nice review wherever you listen to podcasts, or if you'd like to support us financially, you can do so at GundamPodcast.com/Patreon. Or look for other ways to support the show at GundamPodcast.com/support. Most of all, thank you for listening. Are you ready to come down to Neo New York and throw hands over your Gundam opinions? No? That's because you lack conviction. Or maybe you just haven't heard an opinion worth fighting over yet. How about this one from Tyler Nader? Domon's tattoo has nothing to do with Cologne or the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's his personal high score for number of hot dogs eaten in 1 year.
Those are rookie numbers. He needs to do some training with Kobayashi. Yeah, we'll start by introducing you. If there's a way to give me a little more slack on that cable, please do. Okay, good. Yeah. Shoot, there was something that someone said while we were watching it that I thought, oh, that would be a fun way to open this. But now I can't remember what it was.
Oh no. We just watched the episode again.
Just keep watching it until it all works out.
We can't put that in the podcast.
People might be able
us.
to. The ones that Domon comes to respect. Whoop whoop.
No crime could be worth interrupting our podcast.
It's probably not a crime. It's probably somebody in an ambulance. That's allowed.
Oof. I don't know enough to talk about that.
I don't either. That doesn't stop me. I just say things. Are you okay, Nina?
I guess we're not doing phrasing.
Okay, let's bring it back. Reel it in.
You did
No,
this.
I know. But look at how loose we all are.
This was all you. Bandit hat. Why is the bind? Blah, blah, blah. Why is the? Lots of gore in blood. A fair amount of blood in Once Upon a China too.
That's a hard name to say.
A fair amount of blood in Once Upon a China. God. Okay.
I almost said Mobile Suit Bear.
You caught it.
Doing my best.
You caught it.
Doing my best.
They would know that if we did a video podcast. I think I would have pronounced it Cleform.
Which one?
Clamp with a 4.
Oh, Cleform.
Cleform. It's very clear that that's what they intended.
Should we Foley like a clatter sound that implies that I threw something at you? Are you recording a pizza ad?
Not this week.
Okay.